Parents bought my brother a BMW M3 for MY birthday, then handed me a bill for $25,400. I pulled into the driveway at 6:30 on a Tuesday evening, exactly 17 years and 364 days after I was born. Tomorrow I would turn 18. Tomorrow everything would change, though not in the way my parents expected. The house looked the same as it always did. A modest two-story in a neighborhood that had seen better days, with paint peeling near the gutters and a lawn that my father mowed exactly once every 2 weeks, whether it needed it or not. My beat-up Honda Civic, the one I had bought myself with money from my part-time job at the grocery store, looked out of place next to my brother's truck. Brian's Ford F-150 sat there gleaming, freshly washed, taking up more than its fair share of the driveway. I grabbed my backpack from the passenger seat and noticed my hands were shaking slightly. Not from fear exactly, more like anticipation. The feeling you get when you know a storm is coming and you are standing right in its path. The front door creaked the way it always did. Nobody ever fixed anything in this house unless it directly benefited my older brother. I could hear voices coming from the kitchen. My parents were talking, their tones hushed but urgent. Money talk. It was always money talk. I stood in the hallway for a moment, my sneakers making no sound on the worn carpet. The house smelled like reheated casserole and something else. Stress, maybe desperation. The unique scent of people living just slightly beyond their means and blaming everyone but themselves. The moment I stepped into the kitchen doorway, the conversation stopped, just died mid-sentence, like someone had hit a mute button. My father looked up from the papers spread across the kitchen table. My mother turned from the stove, wooden spoon in hand, her face arranged into what she probably thought was a welcoming expression. It was not. This was normal, by the way. The sudden silence when I entered a room, like I was interrupting something important, something that did not concern me, like I was a visitor in my own house rather than someone who had lived here his entire life. My father gathered up the papers quickly, sliding them into a manila folder with movements that were just a bit too casual to be genuine. I caught a glimpse of spreadsheets, numbers in neat columns, my name at the top of one page. He did not know I saw it, or maybe he did not care. Welcome home, Mike, my mother said, turning back to the stove. Dinner will be ready in 20 minutes. I nodded and headed for the stairs. My younger self would have asked questions, would have tried to be part of whatever they were discussing. But I had learned over the years that asking questions only led to being told that I was too young to understand, or that it was not my business, or that I should focus on school and leave the adult matters to the adults. The irony was almost funny. Almost. As I climbed the stairs, I heard them resume their conversation. Quieter now, but still audible. My father's voice carried when he got excited. He was saying something about timing and assets, and finally getting what they deserved. I wondered if they had any idea that I could hear them. I wondered if they would care. My room was at the end of the hall, past Brian's room with its closed door and the faint smell of weed that my parents pretended not to notice, past the bathroom that I shared with him, where his expensive hair products took up 3/4 of the counter space, while my toothbrush and soap lived in a plastic caddy that I moved every time I needed to use the sink. I closed my door and dropped my backpack on the floor. The room was small. A twin bed, a desk I had bought from a yard sale, a dresser with a broken drawer that never quite closed all the way. The walls were bare except for a single poster from a concert I had gone to 2 years ago, back when I still thought my parents might one day see me as something other than an obligation. Before sitting down, I unzipped a hidden pocket in my backpack, the one sewn into the lining that most people did not even know existed. My fingers found a stiff envelope that Mr. Sterling had given me during our meeting. I pulled it out and looked at it for a moment. Inside was a blank template, a legal document with an official-looking header that read Mutual Release and Settlement Agreement. There were empty fields for names, amounts, dates. Mr. Sterling had explained it to me in his office, his voice calm and professional. If they come for money, he had said, do not give them a single dollar without a signature on this. It is a release of liability. Once they sign it and it is notarized, they forfeit any legal or financial claim to you or your assets. forever. Fill in whatever amount they demand. Make them think they won. Then walk away free. I had tucked it into my backpack and hoped I would never need to use it. Now, sitting here listening to my parents whisper about finances downstairs, I was not so sure. I slid the envelope back into the hidden pocket and zipped it closed. Just knowing it was there made me feel slightly more prepared. Like having a fire extinguisher you hoped you would never need. The window looked out over the backyard where my brother's weights sat rusting on the patio because he had used them exactly twice before getting bored. Beyond that, the neighbor's fence, and beyond that, the rest of the world where people lived normal lives with normal families who did not operate like poorly run corporations with clear hierarchies of worth. I sat on the edge of my bed and pulled out my phone. The screen lit up, showing 3 new messages. 2 were from co-workers asking if I could cover shifts next week. The 3rd was from a contact, labeled simply as Mr. Sterling, attorney. My thumb hovered over the message for a moment. Then I opened it. All assets secured in the trust structure as discussed. Awaiting your 18th birthday tomorrow for finalization. The funds will be fully accessible to you and protected from any claims. Congratulations again, and welcome to a new chapter of your life. I read it 3 times. Then I locked my phone and stared at the wall. 2 weeks ago, I had bought a lottery ticket. It was not something I did regularly. In fact, it was only the 3rd time in my life I had ever bought one, but I had been walking past a gas station on my way home from work, and something had made me go inside. Call it intuition. Call it fate. Call it dumb luck. I had bought a single Powerball ticket for $2. I had the numbers memorized from a sequence I had noticed in my advanced mathematics class. Prime numbers arranged in a pattern that pleased my brain. I was good at math. Really good. It was the one thing I had that nobody could take from me or diminish or give to my brother instead. 3 days later, I checked the numbers online during my lunch break at work. I had checked them 3 times because I did not believe it, could not believe it. But there they were, matching perfectly. All 6 numbers. $60 million. I had not told anyone, not a single soul, not my coworkers, not my friends from school, certainly not my family. Instead, I had done research, hours and hours of research in the school library, and on my phone during breaks at work. I learned about lottery winners who went broke, about families who tore themselves apart over sudden wealth, about people who thought they were helping their relatives but ended up being drained dry by endless demands and expectations. I learned about trusts and asset protection and anonymous claims. I learned that some states allowed you to claim lottery winnings through a legal entity to protect your identity. I learned that there were lawyers who specialized in exactly this kind of situation. So I found one, Mr. Sterling. I had contacted him through an encrypted email from the library. I had met him in person exactly once, taking a bus to his office in the city 2 hours away, telling my parents I was visiting a college campus. He had not asked many questions. He had simply outlined the process. We would set up a trust. The trust would claim the winnings. The money would be protected from creditors, lawsuits, and family members with their hands out. On my 18th birthday, I would have full legal access to everything, and nobody would be able to touch it without my permission. It would cost me $50,000 in legal fees. I had agreed without hesitation. $50,000 to protect $60 million seemed like the bargain of the century. Now here I sat, less than 24 hours from legal adulthood, with a fortune hidden behind legal walls that my parents could not even imagine existed. And I knew they were planning something. I had seen it in the way my father gathered those papers, in the way they went silent when I walked into the room, in the way my mother's smile did not quite reach her eyes anymore, like she was looking at a problem that needed solving rather than her son. There was a knock on my door. I shoved my phone under my pillow instinctively, even though the screen was locked. Yeah, I called out. The door opened a crack. My mother peered in. Dinner is ready. Come down and eat. I will be down in a minute. She hesitated, her hand on the doorknob. Your father, and I want to talk to you after dinner. About your birthday tomorrow. My heart rate picked up slightly. Okay, I said, keeping my voice neutral. She smiled that same smile and closed the door. I sat there for a moment longer, listening to her footsteps recede down the hallway. Then I pulled my phone back out and looked at Mr. Sterling's message again. I did not have a specific plan yet. I did not know exactly what my parents were going to spring on me, but I had resources now. I had protection. I had a lawyer who answered my calls and an amount of money that would let me disappear tomorrow if I needed to. The question was whether I would need to. I thought about last week, about how my father had cornered me in the kitchen and told me that they needed my paycheck to cover the electricity bill, the entire paycheck. $347 that I had earned over 2 weeks of stocking shelves and dealing with customers who treated grocery store employees like they were barely human. I had wanted to say no. I had wanted to tell him that I was saving for college, that I needed that money for books and fees and 1,000 other expenses that came with trying to get an education. But I had not said no. I had handed over the money like I always did. Because saying no meant starting a fight, and fights in this house always ended the same way, with me being told I was selfish, ungrateful, that I did not appreciate everything they had sacrificed for me. The really funny part was that 2 days later, I had seen Brian wearing brand new Jordans, $200 sneakers. He was 22 years old and had not held a job in 8 months. But somehow there was money for his shoes while I paid for the electricity that kept his Xbox running 14 hours a day. I had mentioned it once. Exactly once. I had asked my mother why it was fair that I had to give up my entire paycheck while Brian got new shoes. She had looked at me with this tired expression and said that Brian was going through a hard time, that he needed support, not judgment, that I was young and would have plenty of time to earn money later. But Brian needed to feel good about himself right now. I had not asked again. Downstairs, I heard Brian's voice booming through the house. He was telling some story, his words punctuated by my father's laughter. They had that kind of relationship. Easy, natural, the kind of relationship that fathers and sons were supposed to have in the movies and TV shows. I had never had that, even when I was little. Even before Brian became the golden child and I became the spare, there had always been this distance. Like my father was not quite sure what to do with me. Like I was a puzzle he had not figured out how to solve. So he had just stopped trying. My mother was different. She had been warm once. I thought there were pictures of her holding me as a baby, smiling with what looked like genuine happiness. But somewhere along the way, something had shifted. Maybe it was financial stress. Maybe it was disappointment that I was not more like my brother. Maybe it was just easier to love the son who needed everything than the one who asked for nothing. I stood up and looked at myself in the mirror over my dresser. I looked tired, older than 17. My hair needed cutting, but haircuts cost money, and that money could go toward books instead. My clothes were clean but worn, mostly thrift store finds and hand-me-down from cousins. Tomorrow I would be 18. Tomorrow I would legally be an adult. Tomorrow I could walk out of this house and never come back, and there would be nothing they could do to stop me. The thought should have made me happy. Instead, it just made me sad. Sad that it had come to this. Sad that I had to hide a winning lottery ticket. Like it was contraband. Sad that I trusted a lawyer I had met once more than I trusted my own parents. But sadness would not change anything. I had learned that lesson early, and learned it well. I headed downstairs for dinner, my phone tucked safely in my pocket, my secret locked away behind legal protections and attorney-client privilege. Whatever my parents had planned for tomorrow, whatever that folder full of papers meant, I would be ready. Or as ready as anyone could be when they knew a storm was coming, but did not know which direction it would hit from. The kitchen table was set for 4. My mother had made her usual Tuesday casserole, the one with the chicken and rice and cream of mushroom soup, that all congealed together into something that tasted like obligation. Brian was already seated, scrolling through his phone, his plate piled high. My father sat at the head of the table, that manila folder now tucked away somewhere I could not see it. I took my usual seat, the chair that wobbled slightly, because nobody had ever bothered to fix it. My mother served me a portion that was notably smaller than Brian's. Not dramatically smaller, just enough that you would notice if you were paying attention. I was always paying attention. We ate in relative silence for a few minutes. Then my father cleared his throat in that way he did when he was about to say something he thought was important. So, Mike, he started, tomorrow is a big day. I kept my eyes on my plate. Yeah, 18 years old, legally an adult. That is a significant milestone. I nodded, chewing slowly. The casserole had that slightly burnt taste that came from being reheated too many times. Your mother and I have been thinking a lot about your future, about what comes next for you. I could feel it coming. Whatever it was coming now. I set down my fork carefully and looked up at him. We know you've been saving money, my mother added, her voice gentle in that way that was never actually gentle, from your job and from other sources. Other sources. That was interesting. What other sources did they think I had? Then it clicked. They meant Grandma's college fund. $25,000 that my grandmother had set up for me before she passed away 3 years ago. It was locked in a trust until my 18th birthday. Tomorrow morning, to be exact. The bank had sent me a letter 2 weeks ago confirming the release date. They did not know about the lottery. They could not know, but they had been circling Grandma's money like sharks ever since that letter arrived. I had left it on the kitchen counter for maybe 5 minutes before my father had picked it up and read it. His eyes had done this thing, this calculation thing, like he was already spending money that was not his. Brian looked up from his phone, suddenly interested. His eyes had that gleam they got when he sensed an opportunity for entertainment at my expense. We want to talk to you tomorrow, my father continued, after your birthday breakfast, about your finances and your responsibilities. As an adult member of this family, I felt my jaw tighten. Responsibilities. Right? Okay, I said simply. My father seemed to expect more of a response. When I did not give him one, he exchanged a glance with my mother. That glance told me everything I needed to know. They had rehearsed this. They had a plan. And tomorrow, they were going to execute it. I finished my dinner in silence. When I was done, I took my plate to the sink, rinsed it, and headed back upstairs. Behind me, I heard my parents resume their conversation in low voices. I heard my brother laugh at something on his phone. None of them called me back. None of them asked if I wanted dessert, or if I wanted to watch TV with them, or if I was okay. I was used to it. Back in my room, I lay on my bed and stared at the ceiling. The house settled around me with its familiar creaks and groans. Through the wall, I could hear Brian's TV, some action movie with explosions and shouting. Through the floor, the murmur of my parents talking. I pulled out my phone and looked at Mr. Sterling's message one more time. Then I typed a response. They are planning something for tomorrow. I do not know what yet, but I will likely need your help. Can you be available by phone? His response came back within 2 minutes. I will be available all day tomorrow. Call me immediately if you need assistance. Happy birthday, Mike. Tomorrow your life begins. I smiled at that. My life begins. He had no idea how right he was. I set an alarm for 6 a.m. Tomorrow I would wake up early. Tomorrow I would be ready for whatever they had planned. Tomorrow I would stop being the scapegoat who handed over his paycheck and asked for nothing in return. Tomorrow I would turn 18, and nothing would ever be the same again. I fell asleep with my phone under my pillow, and my future hidden behind trust documents and legal walls. Outside my window, the night was dark and quiet. Inside the house, my family slept, dreaming of whatever it was they dreamed about. I dreamed of freedom. I woke up at 6 a.m. to the sound of voices outside my window. Not angry voices, excited ones. The kind of excitement that comes with getting something you have wanted for a long time. My 18th birthday had arrived. I lay there for a moment, staring at the ceiling, listening to my father and brother laughing about something in the driveway. The morning light was just starting to filter through my thin curtains, turning everything in my room a pale gray color that matched how I felt inside. Today I would legally become an adult. Today the trust fund from Grandma would unlock. Today I would have full access to $60 million that nobody in this house knew existed. And today, apparently, something was happening in the driveway that had my father up before 7 a.m. on a Wednesday. I got dressed slowly. Jeans and a plain t-shirt. The same clothes I wore every day because spending money on fashion seemed wasteful when I was saving for college. Or at least That was what I had told everyone. The truth was more complicated now. I could hear my mother in the kitchen, the clatter of pans, and the smell of bacon drifting up through the vents. She was making breakfast. An actual breakfast, not the usual cereal and toast routine. That should have been my first warning sign. When my family started putting in extra effort, it was never for the reason you hoped. I checked my phone. There was a message from the bank, automated and official, confirming that the educational trust fund established by Margaret Henderson, my grandmother, was now accessible to me as of midnight. $25,000. For years of community college, if I was careful. 2 years at a state school, if I was lucky. A down payment on a future that did not involve this house. Except I did not need it anymore. Not really, but they did not know that. I slipped my phone into my pocket and headed downstairs. The bacon smell was stronger now, mixed with coffee and something else. Anticipation, maybe. That electric feeling in the air when something big is about to happen, and everyone knows it except you. My mother was at the stove, wearing her nice blouse, the one she saved for church and parent-teacher conferences. She turned when I came into the kitchen and gave me a smile that was too bright, too practiced. "Happy birthday, sweetie," she said, and there was something in her voice that made my stomach tighten. She gestured toward the back door with her spatula. "Your father and Brian are outside. They want you to come see something." I nodded and walked through the kitchen, past the table that was set with actual plates instead of paper ones, past the orange juice in a glass pitcher instead of the plastic jug we usually drank from. They were trying. That was the thing that hurt the most. They were actually trying to make this day special, just not for the reason a normal family would. I opened the back door and stepped onto the small concrete patio. The morning air was cool and carried the smell of cut grass from a neighbor's yard. My father and Brian were standing in the driveway, and between them, gleaming in the early morning sunlight, was a car. Not just any car. A BMW M3. Midnight blue with chrome accents. The kind of car that cost more than most people made in a year. There was a giant red bow on the hood, the kind you see in commercials where families surprise each other with vehicles during the holidays. For a split second, my brain did something stupid. It thought the car was for me. That maybe, just this once, I had been wrong about everything. That my parents had actually saved up and done something incredibly generous for my 18th birthday. Then my father tossed the keys to Brian. "Happy birthday, little brother," Brian said, catching the keys with a grin that stretched across his face like he had just won the lottery. He was wearing new clothes, too, I noticed. Designer jeans and a polo shirt that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. My father clapped Brian on the shoulder with the kind of pride I had seen 1,000 times but never directed at me. "The boy needs proper transportation for job interviews," he said, his voice full of that fake hearty tone that men use when they're trying to justify something they know is wrong. Can't have him showing up to interviews in that old truck. Image matters in the professional world. Brian was 22. He had not had a job interview in 8 months. The last one had been at a coffee shop, and he had not shown up because he had been hungover. But sure, image matters. I stood there on the patio, my hands in my pockets, watching my brother walk around the BMW like it was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. He was running his fingers along the paint job, checking out the rims, already talking about how he was going to customize the interior. My father finally looked at me. "Mike," he said, and something in his tone made me pay attention. "We need to talk to you. Inside. After breakfast." I should have run then. Should have grabbed my backpack, called an Uber, and never looked back. But I was curious. I needed to know just how bad this was going to be. So I nodded and went back inside. Breakfast was uncomfortable. My mother had made pancakes, bacon, eggs, and hash browns. She kept putting food on my plate and asking if I wanted more orange juice, more syrup, more butter. The attention was suffocating. Brian could not stop talking about the car. He was going on about horsepower and 0 to 60 times and how this was going to change everything for him. How he could finally start networking properly, meeting the right people, making connections. My father nodded along like Brian was making perfect sense. Like a 22-year-old unemployed guy with a luxury sports car was a sound investment in anyone's future. My mother just smiled and said things like how wonderful it all was and how Brian deserved this after such a difficult year. Nobody mentioned my birthday after that initial greeting. Nobody asked what I wanted to do today. Nobody acknowledged that I had just turned 18, except in the context of what that meant legally. When breakfast was over, my father stood up and told me to follow him to the living room. My mother stayed in the kitchen, suddenly very busy with the dishes. Brian disappeared upstairs to shower, probably go drive his new car around the neighborhood, and make sure everyone saw it. The living room was rarely used. It was a formal room with a good furniture that we only sat in when we had company. My father gestured for me to sit on the couch. He remained standing, holding a manila folder, the same folder I had seen him hide last night. This was it. Whatever they had planned, it was happening now. He cleared his throat in that way he did when he was about to make a speech. "Mike," he started, "your mother and I have been thinking a lot about your future, about what it means to be an adult, and about the responsibilities that come with adulthood." I said nothing. I had learned a long time ago that when my father started talking like this, interrupting only made things worse. He continued, "We have invested a significant amount of money and time into raising you. 18 years of food, shelter, clothing, education, transportation, medical care, and various other expenses. We have never asked you to acknowledge this investment or to contribute your fair share." Investment. He called raising me an investment, like I was a stock portfolio that had failed to provide adequate returns. He opened the manila folder and pulled out several sheets of paper. They were printed on both sides, full of tiny text and numbers in neat columns. He handed them to me. I took the papers with hands that wanted to shake, but refused to. I looked down at what he had given me. It was a spreadsheet, an Excel document that had been printed out. The header read, "Michael Henderson Cost of Child Rearing Analysis, birth to age 18. Below that in smaller text, total amount due, $25,400. I stared at the number. $25,400. They had calculated, down to the penny, how much it had cost them to raise me. I started reading the line items. There were hundreds of them, organized by year and category. Food expenses, clothing expenses, school supplies, utility costs attributed to my portion of the household, a percentage of the mortgage based on the square footage of my bedroom, car insurance when I was on their policy, gas money for trips to school, to work, to everywhere. They had itemized my childhood and assigned it a price tag. There were entries that made my hands clench around the paper. $200 for my 10th birthday party. Except I had not had a party that year. My mother had made a cake, and we had eaten it with just the family. But according to this spreadsheet, they had spent $200 on decorations and entertainment. $350 per month for food for ages 16 through 18. I barely ate at home anymore. I bought my own groceries with money from my job and kept them in my room because Brian would eat anything that was not specifically hidden. $1,500 per year for educational enrichment. I had never had a tutor. I had taught myself everything I needed to know using library books and online resources. The list went on and on. Some things were legitimate expenses, sure, but at least a third of this was inflated, fabricated, or outright lies. I looked up at my father. He was watching me with an expression that was trying to be sympathetic, but came across as calculating, like a salesman who had just presented a bill and was waiting to see if the customer would pay it without asking questions. "Now, Mike," he said, his voice taking on that reasonable tone that was never actually reasonable, "we know this might come as a surprise, but we have discussed this extensively with financial advisor, and we believe this is a fair accounting of the resources we have devoted to your upbringing." A financial advisor. They had actually consulted someone about how to charge their son for being born. He continued, "We are aware that your grandmother's educational trust fund becomes accessible today, $25,000. We are prepared to accept that amount as payment in full for the debt you owe us." There it was. The real reason for the birthday breakfast. The real reason for the BMW in the driveway. They had bought Brian a car, and now they wanted me to pay for it with Grandma's money. My mother appeared in the doorway, her hands clasped in front of her like she was about to deliver bad news, but was trying to be strong about it. "We would not ask if we had any other option," she said quietly, "but Brian needs this opportunity. And you have always been so responsible with money. We know you will find another way to pay for college. You are smart enough to get scholarships. Smart enough to get scholarships. Translation: we are giving your inheritance to your brother, and you should be grateful we are framing it as a debt instead of just taking it." My father pulled out another sheet of paper from a folder. This one was printed on heavier stock and had an official-looking header. It was from a law firm I had never heard of. Some bottom-tier ambulance chaser they had probably found in the phone book. The letter said, in formal legal language, that I was financially obligated to reimburse my parents for childcare expenses, and that failure to do so could result in legal action, including a lawsuit for breach of implied contract and unjust enrichment. They were threatening to sue me on my 18th birthday for being their son. The room was very quiet. I could hear the clock on the wall ticking. I could hear Brian's shower running upstairs. I could hear my mother's breathing, slightly faster than normal. I looked at the spreadsheet again. $25,400. They had even added in $400 for administrative costs of preparing this document. Something cold settled in my chest. It was not anger, exactly. It was more like clarity. The kind of clarity that comes when you finally see something you've been avoiding looking at directly for years. My parents did not love me. Maybe they never had. Maybe they had tried at some point and failed. Or maybe I had just been born at the wrong time to the wrong people, and love was never part of the equation at all. What they saw when they looked at me was not a son. It was a resource, an asset to be liquidated, a problem that could be solved with the right financial arrangement. I set the papers down on the coffee table very carefully. My hands were steady now. My voice when I spoke was calm. "I need some time to process this," I said, "and I need to call the bank to verify that I can access the fund today. Give me an hour." My father's expression shifted slightly. He had been expecting an argument, maybe tears, definitely resistance. The calm acceptance seemed to throw him. "An hour," he repeated. "Yes, 1 hour. Then we can discuss the next steps." My mother looked uncertain. "Maybe we should all sit down together and call the bank. We can help you navigate the paperwork." Translation: we want to make sure you actually have the money before we finalize this. I shook my head. I am 18 now, legally an adult, like you said. I need to handle this myself. 1 hour. There was a moment where it could have gone either way. Then my father nodded slowly. 1 hour, he agreed. "But Mike, this needs to be resolved today. The dealership needs a down payment by 5 p.m., or we lose the financing terms on the BMW. Of course, the BMW. Always the BMW. I stood up and walked toward the stairs. My legs felt like they belonged to someone else. My body was moving on autopilot, while my brain was spinning at 1,000 miles per hour. Behind me, I heard my parents start talking in low voices. My mother sounded worried. My father sounded confident. They thought they had won. They thought they had cornered me with their spreadsheet and their lawyer letter and their threat of a lawsuit. They thought I had no choice but to hand over Grandma's money and smile while they used it to fund my brother's newest toy. They had no idea what was about to happen. I climbed the stairs and walked past Brian's room. Through the door, I could hear him singing in the shower, happy and carefree. He probably did not even know about the invoice. My parents had probably told him it was all taken care of. That little brother was happy to help out. That family sticks together. I went into my room and closed the door, locked it. Then I sat on my bed and pulled out my phone. My hands were shaking now, not from fear, from rage, from the purest, coldest anger I had ever felt in my life. $25,400. They had put a price on my existence and decided it was worth slightly more than a used car. I looked at the spreadsheet again because I had brought it with me without really thinking about it. I needed to see it again. Needed to make sure I had not imagined the sheer audacity of what they had done. The numbers swam in front of my eyes. Food, shelter, the roof over my head that I was supposed to be grateful for. The meals that were somehow worth hundreds of dollars per month, even though I barely ate with them anymore. They had line items for things that had never happened. Birthdays I had not celebrated. Gifts I had never received. Expenses that had been incurred for Brian, but attributed to me because it made the math work out better. This was not a debt. This was fraud. This was a shakedown. This was extortion dressed up in Excel formatting and legal letterhead. I opened my backpack and found a hidden pocket. My fingers closed around the envelope from Mr. Sterling, the blank template, the mutual release and settlement agreement. He had told me, if they come for money, do not give them a single dollar without a signature on this. They had come for money, $25,400 to be exact, and now I knew exactly what amount to write in the blank field. I pulled out my phone and dialed Mr. Sterling's number. It rang twice before he picked up. His voice was calm and professional. "Mike, happy birthday. I take it something has happened." I told him everything. About the car, about the invoice, about the threat of a lawsuit, about how they wanted Grandma's money by 5 p.m. today, or they would take me to court. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that made everything click into place. They have overplayed their hand. If they are demanding a specific amount tied to the trust fund, and if they have put this in writing with a law firm's letterhead, they have just made this very easy for us. Do you still have the settlement template I gave you? Yes. Good. Here is what you're going to do. He laid out the plan in clear, precise steps. Fill out the template with their exact demand amount. Get them to sign it in front of a notary. Make sure the notary stamps it properly. It took maybe 5 minutes of explanation, but one part stuck with me more than anything else. Listen carefully, Mike, he had said, his voice taking on that tone lawyers use when they are about to tell you something critically important. When you fill out that form, make sure you write $25,400 in the settlement amount field. But here's the key part. You need to check the box labeled full and final release. That is standard language in settlement agreements. What it means is that once they sign that document and accept that money, they are releasing all claims against you, past, present, and future. Financial, legal, emotional, everything. If they sign that and it gets notarized, they cannot come back later. Not even if they find out you won $1 billion tomorrow. They are agreeing that $25,400 settles all accounts between you forever. Forever. That word had weight to it. Permanence. Finality. When he was done explaining everything, I sat there holding the phone and feeling something I had not felt in a very long time. Hope. Not hope that my family would suddenly become different people. Not hope that we would reconcile and laugh about this someday. But hope that I could walk away from this cleanly, permanently, with legal documentation that would protect me from ever having to deal with them again. They wanted to sell me. Fine. I would buy my freedom. But on my terms, not theirs. I thanked Mr. Sterling and ended the call. Then I sat there for a moment, breathing slowly, letting the plan settle into my mind. 1 hour. They had given me 1 hour. That was all I needed. I could hear my father downstairs, talking on the phone, probably to the dealership, confirming the payment schedule, counting money that he thought was already his. I could hear Brian in his room now, probably getting dressed to go show off his new car to his friends, to post pictures on social media with captions about how blessed he was. I could hear my mother in the kitchen, putting away the good dishes, cleaning up from the birthday breakfast that had never been about celebrating my birthday at all. They thought they knew how this day would end. They thought they had planned everything perfectly. The timing, the pressure, the legal threat, the guilt, the family obligation. They were wrong. I looked at my phone one more time. The bank notification was still there. $25,000, available for withdrawal. The money my grandmother had set aside for my education because she had wanted me to have opportunities she never had. She had died 3 years ago. Cancer. It had been fast and brutal and unfair. One of the last things she had said to me in the hospital was that she was proud of me, that I was going to do great things, that I should never let anyone make me feel small. I wish she could see what I was about to do. I think she would have approved. I set an alarm on my phone for 50 minutes from now. Then I pulled out the envelope and started preparing. By the time I walked back downstairs, everything would be ready. The documents, the terms, the price of my freedom written in clear, legal language that would stand up in any court. They wanted $25,400. They were going to get it, but they were also going to give me something in return. Something they did not even know they had. Something worth more than all the money in the world. The alarm on my phone went off after 50 minutes. I had spent that time filling out the settlement agreement template with a black pen, my handwriting careful and deliberate. Every letter had to be legible. Every number had to be clear. This document was going to be the most important thing I ever signed in my life. In the blank field labeled settlement amount, I wrote $25,400. In the section labeled party of the first part, I wrote my full legal name, Michael James Henderson. In the section labeled party of the second part, I wrote Richard Henderson and Patricia Henderson. Then I found the checkbox, the one Mr. Sterling had told me about, the one that mattered more than anything else on the page. Next to the words full and final release of all claims, I drew a careful X. The document was 2 pages long. Legal language that basically said I was paying them the amount specified in exchange and releasing all financial, legal, and familial claims against me, past, present, and future. It was written in that dense lawyer speak that most people skimmed over without really reading, focusing on the dollar amount instead of the implications. My parents would see $25,400 and think they had won. They would see the official letterhead from Sterling and Associates and think this was just a formality. They would sign it because they wanted their money and they wanted it now. They would not understand what they were really signing until it was too late. I had one more thing to prepare. The checkbook from Grandma's trust fund had arrived in the mail a week ago. I had hidden it in the same place I kept the settlement template. Now I pulled it out and filled out a check. Pay to the order of Richard and Patricia Henderson. Amount, $25,400. In the memo line, I almost wrote for services rendered, but decided that was too petty. Instead, I left it blank. Let them interpret that however they wanted. I did not sign it yet. That would come later, after they signed the settlement agreement. Everything had to happen in the right order. I looked at myself in the mirror one last time. I looked older than I had this morning. Older than 18. Maybe that was what happened when you stopped being someone's son and became a transaction instead. My hands were steady. My breathing was calm. I felt like I was standing outside my own body, watching some other version of myself prepare to do something that would change everything forever. There was no going back after this. Once I walked down those stairs, once I set this plan in motion, my relationship with my family would end. Not in a fight, not in a dramatic blow-up with screaming and thrown objects, but in signatures and legal documents and the cold finality of paperwork that could not be undone. I picked up the settlement agreement and the checkbook. Then I unlocked my door and headed downstairs. My father was in the living room, pacing. He looked up when he heard me on the stairs, his expression a mixture of impatience and anticipation. My mother was sitting on the couch, her hands folded in her lap. She gave me that same too bright smile from this morning. Brian was nowhere to be seen, probably out driving his new car, oblivious to what was happening in this house. My father checked his watch in an exaggerated gesture. 58 minutes, he said, cutting it close. I walked into the living room and stood in front of them. I had the settlement agreement in one hand and the checkbook in the other. I have thought about your proposal, I said, keeping my voice level and calm. I have spoken with the bank. The trust fund is accessible. I can write you a check right now for the full amount. My father's face lit up. Excellent. I knew you would see reason. Mike, family takes care of family. This is the right thing to do. My mother nodded enthusiastically. We are so proud of you for being mature about this. This shows real character. Character. Right. That was one word for it. I held up the settlement agreement. However, I said, before I write this check, I need you both to sign something. My father's expression shifted slightly. Suspicion flickered across his face. What is it? It is a settlement agreement. Standard legal documentation. It confirms that this payment of $25,400 satisfies all financial obligations between us. That way there are no misunderstandings later. Everything is clear and legal. I handed him the document. He took it and started reading, his eyes scanning the first page. My mother leaned over to read along with him. I watched their faces as they read. They were not really reading it, not carefully. They were skimming for keywords. Dollar amount, payment, release. Their brains were filtering the information through the lens of what they wanted to see, which was money coming their way. My father flipped to the second page. There were signature lines at the bottom, spaces for both of them to sign. A space for me, a space for a notary public. This needs to be notarized, my father said, looking up at me. Yes, I know Mrs. Chun next door is a notary. We can walk over there right now. It will take 10 minutes. My mother spoke up, her voice hesitant. This language about releasing all claims. What exactly does that mean? My heart rate picked up slightly, but I kept my expression neutral. It means that once I pay you this money, we are square. You cannot come back later and say, I owe you more. It protects both of us. You get your payment. I get legal confirmation that my debt is paid. Clean break. That seemed to satisfy her. She nodded slowly. That makes sense. We would never come after you for more money anyway, sweetie. We just need this one payment. Of course, I said. I know that this is just a formality. For legal purposes. My father was still reading, but his attention kept drifting to the checkbook in my other hand. He wanted to see that check. He wanted to know the money was real. The document was just an obstacle between him and what he wanted. Finally, he looked up at me. Fine, let us get this notarized. The sooner we do this, the sooner we can get the payment to the dealership. Always the dealership. Always the BMW. Even now, in this moment, he was thinking about the car instead of what he was signing away. We walked next door to Mrs. Chen's house. She was a retired paralegal who did notary work from home for extra income. She knew our family, had watched me grow up, had probably heard my parents complain about raising kids over backyard barbecues. She answered the door wearing reading glasses on a chain and holding a cup of tea. Oh, hello, Henderson family, she said with a smile. What can I do for you today? My father explained that we needed a document notarized. She invited us into her small living room, which smelled like jasmine and old books. She had a proper notary stamp and seal on her desk, along with a journal where she recorded every transaction. She put on her official demeanor, the one that said she was now acting in her capacity as a notary public, and this was serious business. She looked at the document, checked our IDs, and asked each of us individually if we understood what we were signing, and if we were signing of our own free will. My parents said yes without hesitation. They signed their names on the designated lines, their signatures bold and confident. My father's handwriting was all sharp angles. My mother's was round and looping. Both of them looked like they could not wait for this to be over, so they could get their money. I signed my name on my line. My signature was smaller, more controlled. I was signing away my family. That deserved a certain amount of gravity. Mrs. Chin stamped the document with her official seal. The sound of the stamp was loud in the quiet room. Final. Permanent. She signed her name and wrote down the date and time in her journal. Then she handed the document back to me. All done, she said cheerfully. Congratulations on turning 18, Mike. Big day for you. Thank you, Mrs. Chun, I said. It really is. We walked back to our house. My father was practically vibrating with anticipation. My mother kept glancing at me like she was waiting for me to change my mind or realize what I had done. But I knew exactly what I had done, and it was perfect. Back in the living room, I set the notarized settlement agreement on the coffee table. Then I opened the checkbook and signed the check I had already filled out. The sound of the pen on paper seemed unnaturally loud. I tore the check out carefully along the perforated line and held it up. My father reached for it, but I pulled it back slightly. Just so we are clear, I said, this payment settles everything. All debts, all obligations, all claims. We are done after this. My father barely heard me. He was staring at the check. Yes, everything is settled. Family is family, but business is business. We understand. I handed him the check. He snatched it out of my hand like he thought I might take it back. He looked at it, verifying the amount, checking my signature. Then he smiled, this wide, satisfied smile that made my stomach turn. You see, Mike, he said, holding up the check like it was a trophy. This is what being an adult is about. Paying your debts. Taking responsibility. You have learned an important lesson today. My mother stood up and came over to hug me. It was awkward and brief, and her perfume smelled like it always did, floral and cloying. Thank you for understanding, she said softly. This really does help the family. Brian needs this opportunity. Brian, of course. Always Brian. I stepped back from the hug. Actually, I said, I need to go pack. The room went very still. Pack? My mother repeated. Pack what? My things. I am moving out today. My father's smile vanished. What are you talking about? You live here. Where would you go? Anywhere that is not here. The settlement agreement we just signed includes a mutual release of familial obligations. Section 5. Did you read it? My father looked down at the document on the coffee table, then back at me. His face was starting to turn red. This is ridiculous. You're not moving out. Your mother. And I did not raise you just to have you run off the moment you turn 18. Actually, I said, keeping my voice calm, and even you did not raise me. You invoiced me. There's a difference. The sound of the front door opening interrupted whatever my father was about to say. Brian walked in, jingling his car keys, still riding high from his morning. He took one look at the scene in the living room, and his smile faded. What is going on? He asked. Mike thinks he is moving out, my mother said, her voice starting to crack. On his birthday. After everything we have done for him. Brian laughed. Dude, you are being dramatic. Where are you even going to go? You do not have money for rent. Mom said you could stay in the basement for $500 a month. That is a steal. I looked at Brian. Really looked at him. He was wearing a new watch. Probably $200. His shoes were spotless. Some limited edition sneakers he had been talking about for weeks. His haircut was fresh, probably $50 at that trendy place downtown. Meanwhile, I had been wearing the same 5 T-shirts in rotation for the past year because I was saving every penny I could. The differential treatment had been so obvious, so consistent, so utterly shameless, and none of them had ever even pretended to see it. I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, turned the screen so all 3 of them could see it. The number on the screen was very large, very, very large. $42 million in change, sitting in an account with my name on it. For a moment, nobody said anything. They just stared at the screen like it was showing them something impossible, like I had pulled up a picture of a unicorn or a screenshot from a video game. Then my father said, in a very quiet voice, "What is that?" "That is my bank account." "Well, one of them. The trust account that Mr. Sterling set up for me. 2 weeks ago, I bought a lottery ticket. Powerball. I won. $60 million before taxes. $42 million after the government took their share." My mother made a small sound. Not quite a gasp. More like the noise you make when you've been punched in the stomach, and all the air leaves your lungs at once. Brian's face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Confusion. Disbelief. Understanding. And then something ugly. Something that looked a lot like rage. "You won the lottery," my father said slowly, like he was testing out the words to see if they made sense. 2 weeks ago. And you did not tell us. No, I did not tell you, because I knew exactly what would happen if I did. I knew you would find a way to take it, to justify it, to convince yourselves that you deserved it more than I did. So I hired a lawyer, set up asset protection, made sure that nobody could touch that money without my permission. I turned off my phone and put it back in my pocket. The screen had been visible for maybe 10 seconds. That was all it took to change everything. My father looked down at the check in his hand. $25,400. A number that had seemed so significant an hour ago. Now it looked like exactly what it was. Pocket change. A rounding error. Nothing. The settlement agreement, he said, his voice hollow. You tricked us. I did not trick you. I gave you exactly what you asked for. You demanded $25,400 for the cost of raising me. I paid it. In exchange, you signed away all claims to me and my assets. That was your choice. You could have asked me to share. You could have treated me like family instead of a debtor. But you chose to put a price on me. So I paid your price and bought my freedom. My mother was crying now. Real tears, not the performative kind she used to use when she wanted sympathy. Mike, please. We did not know. We would never have done this if we had known. That is exactly the problem, I said. You would not have done this if you knew I had money. But you were fine doing it when you thought I was poor. You were fine charging me for being born when you thought all I had was $25,000 from Grandma. That tells me everything I need to know about what I am worth to you. Brian finally found his voice. You selfish piece of garbage. We are family. You're supposed to share. Share. That was funny. I looked at him directly. Like you shared your new BMW? Like you shared the basement apartment you were going to charge me $500 a month for? Like you shared the bathroom counter space or the food in the fridge or any of the 1,000 other things that I had to beg for while you took whatever you wanted? He did not have an answer for that. None of them did. I had already packed a bag earlier, hidden in my room. I went upstairs and got it. When I came back down, my parents were sitting on the couch. My father still holding that check, both of them looking like someone had died. In a way, someone had. The version of me that had been their son. The version that had tried to be good enough, obedient enough, invisible enough. That person was gone. What stood in front of them now was someone else entirely. There was a car pulling up outside. I had arranged it earlier, after my call with Mr. Sterling. A black SUV with tinted windows. Professional. Anonymous. Before I left, I said one more thing. For what it is worth, I wanted to share. I wanted to come home today and tell you about the lottery and split it with everyone. I wanted to pay off your mortgage, set up college funds, help Brian get his life together. I actually thought about how happy you would all be, how grateful, how proud. I paused in the doorway, but then you gave me that invoice. You itemized my childhood and decided I owed you for the privilege of existing. So I paid your price, $25,400. That is what you decided I was worth. That is what you get, not a penny more. My mother tried to stand up, but her legs seemed to give out. She sat back down hard. Mike, she said, her voice breaking, please do not do this. We can fix this. We can tear up the agreement. We made a mistake. The agreement is notarized and legally binding. You cannot tear it up. You sign away all claims to me and my assets in exchange for that check. It is done. My father finally looked up at me. His eyes were wet. I had never seen him cry before. You planned this. The lawyer, the timing, everything. I had 2 weeks to plan it. You had 18 years to love me. I guess we both made our choices. I walked out the front door. The SUV was idling at the curb. The driver got out and took my bag without a word, loading it into the back. He opened the rear passenger door for me. I took one last look at the house, at the peeling paint and the overgrown lawn, and the BMW in the driveway that had started all of this, at the window where I could see Brian's silhouette, probably watching me leave. I did not feel triumphant. I did not feel victorious. I just felt tired and free. Those two things together were a strange combination. I got into the SUV. The leather seats were cool and comfortable. The driver closed the door and got behind the wheel. He asked me where I wanted to go. I gave him the address of a hotel downtown, somewhere expensive and anonymous where I could figure out what came next. Tomorrow I would start looking at apartments, college applications, investment advisors, all the normal things that 18-year-olds with sudden wealth had to think about. But tonight, I just needed to be somewhere that was not that house, somewhere quiet where I could breathe without feeling like the air itself was trying to suffocate me. As we pulled away from the curb, I looked back one time. My father was standing in the doorway now, still holding that check. My mother was behind him. They looked small, diminished, like people who had just realized they had gambled everything on a bad hand and lost. The SUV turned the corner, and they disappeared from view. I faced forward. The city stretched out ahead of me, full of possibilities and new beginnings, and a future that belonged to me and nobody else. The driver asked if I wanted music. I said no. The silence was better. My phone buzzed. A text from Mr. Sterling. Everything went according to plan, I assume. I typed back, "Yes, thank you." His response came immediately. "You paid for your freedom today, Mike. Make sure you use it well. Happy birthday." I looked out the window at the passing streets. Neighborhoods I had grown up in, transformed now by the knowledge that I would never have come back if I did not want to. Every mile was distance. Every minute was separation. People talk about money changing you, about how lottery winners end up unhappy or bankrupt or destroyed by sudden wealth. Maybe that would happen to me eventually. Maybe I would make mistakes, waste it, regret it. But right now, in this moment, I did not regret a single thing. I had paid $25,400 for something that most people never get to buy. Complete freedom from people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, but who had put conditions on that love and then itemized them in a spreadsheet. The hotel was nice. Nicer than anywhere I had ever stayed. The room had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. A king-size bed. A bathroom bigger than my old bedroom. Everything was clean and new and mine. I ordered room service. Not because I was hungry, but because I could. Because nobody was going to tell me it was too expensive or ask why I was not eating what was already in the fridge. When the food arrived, I sat by the window and ate slowly, watching the sun set over the city. Orange and pink light, turning the buildings into something beautiful. The sky was clear. Tomorrow would be sunny. I thought about Grandma, about how she had set up that trust fund, hoping it would help me go to college, about how she would probably laugh if she knew how I had used it instead, to buy my way out of a family that had never really wanted me in the first place. I hoped she would be proud. I thought she would be. She had always been the only one who saw me as something other than a burden or a resource. She had called me kiddo and let me help her in the garden and told me I was going to do great things. Well, Grandma, I did a thing. I did not let them make me small, just like you said. That night, I slept better than I had in years. No sound from Brian's room. No hushed conversations about money drifting up through the vents. No feeling that I was taking up space in a place where I was not wanted. Just silence. Just peace. Just the knowledge that when I woke up tomorrow, I could be anyone I wanted to be. Go anywhere I wanted to go. Build a life that belonged to me. I had spent 18 years being someone's son, someone's brother, someone's obligation, someone's debt. Now I was just Mike, 18 years old, $42 million in the bank, and absolutely, completely, finally free. The next morning, I started making plans.